It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Girls Table, a podcast where founders, careers, and investors share their stories. Today, I'm joined by Lisa Carmen Wang. And before we get into it, Lisa, how are you doing? I'm so excited to have you on the Girls Table today.
I am fantastic, and I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited too. And for those of you who don't know Lisa, first off, she's a complete badass, which makes sense because she's the founder and CEO of Bad Bitch Empire, which is a global community platform building unapologetic worth and wealth for women. Lisa's also a four-time USA national champion and Hall of Fame gymnast who turned serial entrepreneur, angel investor, venture capitalist, certified executive coach, and global speaker. That's a mouthful, but really Lisa does so much. She's also named Forbes 30 Under 30 in Venture Capital, Entrepreneur Magazine 100 Most Powerful Women, Fast Company Executive Board, and Red Bull Hero of the Year. Lisa actually began her career as a Wall Street hedge fund analyst. She is the author of a highly anticipated book, which is coming out this fall, called The Bad Bitch Business Bible, which is being published by HarperCollins. So Lisa, thanks so much for coming on today. You've been a close friend of mine. I'm so excited to have you on and share your story.
Thank you.
Well, I want to rewind a lot because I think one thing that really caught my attention is you started off actually as an Olympic level U.S. national champion as a gymnast. So can you talk about growing up? What was that like from your practice schedule to competitions?
Yeah, so gymnastics really shaped my personality because I started when I was 9 years old, and very quickly it became clear that my coaches saw that I had something and I loved the sport. And so within 2 years, I had moved up into the junior team, and I was training 5 to 6 hours a day. So even when I was in middle school and high school, I would put all my classes at the beginning of the day, and then I would skip lunch. I would eat lunch in the car, and then my mom would drive me to practice, and I would just be there training. And then I would get home at around 9 or 10 p.m., do my homework in the car. I had this great setup, so I loved baths. So I would have a bath, like a hot bath when I got home, and do my physics homework like in the bathtub with a little thing where you put your book on. And I was so singularly focused on this dream that I started creating for myself, which was to be a national champion, to be an Olympian. And that was a 10-year long dream. And I think I was so focused on it. And there were two things. It was I wanted to be good at gymnastics, and I wanted to make sure that I had a strong foundation, that I was good at school. So I think I just really didn't have time to be bothered by social life or dating or anything like that. And that was all the way through the age of 19. And near the end of my career, I was training at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and Lake Placid. I also went to the Russian Olympic Training Center, which was literally, if you think of military camp in the middle of Siberia, that's what it was like.
I can't even imagine. I feel like that was insane.
Yeah, 9 hours a day of training. They purposely put the Russian Olympic Training Center in the middle of nowhere in Novogorsk, Russia, where the nearest thing is a little bodega that you have to walk in the snow to get to, so that the athletes aren't distracted. It was like hockey players and gymnasts. The food was Russian borscht and stale bread and tomato and cucumber, and it was just very dreary, and you just want to go to bed and train, and it's so cold, but you have nothing else to do but focus on the sport. And so I think that really set me up to set very long-term goals and know that every long-term goal requires a lot of hard work, a lot of discipline. And I think from the beginning, I was never the most talented. I was never the most flexible. What I knew was that I could outwork anyone. And so I got that feedback from my coaches where they were always Lisa works harder than any of you, right? And I did see a lot of talented girls who I felt initially wow, they're so much better than me, but they were lazy, you know? And it is true that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you eventually stop being a gymnast? Did you go to college for it? Did you practice after college?
So I stopped when I was 19, and again, I really wanted to go to the Olympics, and my dream was the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, and it would have meant a lot because I'm of Chinese background and I would be representing the US team, and it would have been this like really cool moment because my parents had immigrated from China. And so I ended up missing the Olympic Games by 0.25 tenths of a point. So I became alternate, and that was probably one of the toughest moments in my life because it's like, you know, you just dream of that for a decade and you work towards it and you sacrifice so much. And I just remember the day at World Championships when I missed it, I was like my entire identity shattered because I had really banked my identity on being a gymnast. And when I was like, okay, if I'm not that, what am I? Like, who am I? What am I like living for? And I think it was that moment of learning how to pick myself back up again. Wait a minute, my identity isn't that of a gymnast, it is that of a fighter and a champion. And like champions don't leave when they're down. They don't quit when they're down. And so when I missed it, I actually, around that same time, I got an acceptance to Yale University, which was my dream school. But I was like, I don't feel like this chapter of my life is done yet. I need to finish it my way. And so I told Yale that I wasn't coming. I deferred for a year. And that was when I flew to Russia. I trained at the Russian Olympic Training Center. And I was like, I think for the first time in my life, I am going to do this for myself, not for my coaches, not for my parents, not for the country, not for anybody else's expectations. I was like, this is for my chapter of my book. And I ended up going to my last competition in 2008, and it was the national championships. And I won every single gold medal. I won Athlete of the Year. And then I was like, okay, peace, bitches. This is how I leave. And then I went to college, and I was like, I stopped gymnastics after that.
That's amazing. So did you end up going to the Olympics as an alternative gymnast, or did you decide, okay, I won, like I'm going to leave on a high note, and then that's it?
Yeah. I left in that way.
That's amazing. I feel like that's awesome. And I feel like also really hard because, you know, like originally your end goal was the Olympics, and you decide, you know what, like just doing the best I could possibly do with the cards that you're given. I was also thinking about being a gymnast because I used to actually be a fencer in college. And one thing about fencing is like everybody's different. Like there's no set really way to win. Like you have to poke them at the end of the day. But when you think about gymnasts, it's a sport that really demands like so much perfection. So how do you balance that pursuit of excellence with the understanding that perfection may not always be attainable? And how does this mindset really apply to who you are today and the work that you do today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am like naturally a perfectionist. And then when you add on gymnastics, which is a sport that like idolizes the perfect 10, perfect body, perfect smile, perfect leotard, it's a very, very, I would say like toxic environment to grow up in, where you outsource your self-worth to coaches and judges who will tell you you're 2 pounds too fat, you know, your smile is not pretty enough, you're like, you suck. And then like when you're 16, 13 years old, you're like, whoa, I really do suck. And I have to do everything to be better so that other people will approve of me and give me a good score. It's like literally you were given a value, right, based off of how perfect you are. And I think that in some ways that feeling of never being good enough really drove me to be successful, to accomplish a lot of things early on in my life. But I did realize like when I left gymnastics and I started my professional career, that perfectionism was really holding me back in many ways, because it, alongside perfectionism, which I think a lot of high achievers have, it's like it's self-doubt, right? It's imposter syndrome. It's feeling like you're never good enough, feeling that you always have to compare yourself to other people who are better than you, more successful than you, and looking for flaws in yourself rather than honoring your strengths. And so so this kind of goes towards like what I write about in my book, The Bad Bitch Business Bible, which is like the good girl brainwashing and all of those societal and media messages that tell women you need to be like polite and perfect and people pleasing and nice and just like seek other people's validation to be you. And I outsourced my self-worth, I think, a lot to accomplishments and like awards and people's approval of me. And I didn't even realize I was doing that. But I think now, as I grow, I've realized there's a good balance between I can have high standards for myself without tying my innate self-worth as a human to the achievement of the goal.
Yeah. And it's so funny because you start off, I feel like, in college and people are like, okay, get the dream job, go into banking, go into consulting. And then it's like, okay, you get older, you're Forbes 30 under 30. So you're like always looking for these external validations or like getting the next thing, trying to get the promotion, trying to do more. So how do you really break free from that? Oh, hey, I need to be perfect. I need to hit this next milestone, and really just like understand that like, hey, you can be a bad bitch. You can do what you want and still be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like we probably have like, because you're also very successful and like hustling at such a young age. And like it was like, I think something starts to happen when you have accomplished like a decent amount, right? It's like, for example, even when I got Forbes 30 under 30, I remember being like, okay, but I'm still the same person.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, everyone's like, oh my God, congratulations. And I'm like, did I deserve this?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you start getting imposter syndrome because you're like, wait, like is there more expectation of me, more pressure to be someone? And like, what if I still feel insecure in some places? And yeah, so it's like, there's a lot of pressure. And so you start to recognize that, at least I did, that there was this growing gap between like the more I accomplish, in some ways, like I feel like the greater the gap between like how I feel about myself, because I'm still just me when I look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like there was more pressure to be more constantly. And I think at some point that feeling of whether self-pressure, like expectation, external validation, it starts feeling really suffocating. And then you're like, who am I? What if like no one cares anymore? What if you fail tremendously? Who am I then? Like, am I still a bad bitch? Am I still worthy? Do I still love myself? And so I started working really hard on that of like, I'm going to detach myself from all of this noise, right? Because it's very easy to get caught up in like everyone trying to one up or like compare themselves. And I discovered that there were a lot of parts of myself that I had felt like I couldn't fully express because I was in this like professional business world, right? And like women are supposed to act or dress or speak a certain way. And what I discovered, part of it was like, what does my feminine power look like? What is it like? I like feeling beautiful and sexy and like strong and empowered and all these things. And like occasionally, like I do curse, and then like I endearingly call my friend, like, hey bitches. And it's like, it's a endearing thing, right? When I launched the Bad Bitch Empire, like even that brand, which was so unapologetic, I realized that, and like I came out with this like, long braid, and like I was exploring lingerie at that point, and I was like, I feel so empowered when I feel sexy. I noticed that like it made some men uncomfortable. Yeah. Like to be a woman who's so unapologetically like loves herself and is doing it for herself rather than being like, I'm just trying to be appropriate for all these men in suits who want to put you in a box. And so I think the more you get into like, what is my authentic self for me, what makes me feel empowered, how like that is when you start realizing like, oh, that's my inner bad bitch coming out.
Yeah. And it seems obvious now, like looking back, like, okay, you were doing all these things, like you were a bad bitch from the start, but was there a certain kind of moment in time that really made you be like, wait, I'm a bad bitch and I'm going to go ahead and start this empire of what you're building? Like, did anything happen in your life that really made you want to go ahead and start this and be a voice for women?
So prior to the Bad Bitch Empire, I had a company called She Works. And then so I was already for like years doing these female entrepreneur breakfasts and like connecting women to investors. But it was like, a much chiller brand. And I go to extremes, right? Like I love A/B testing, like my different extremes of my identity. And I'm like, okay, what do I feel like when I'm like this or like that? And it wasn't like one event, but I think every woman has had the experience of just like the small paper cuts, right? Being overlooked, undervalued, assumed as inferior, like just little things that you experience in male-dominated industries where it's just like, oh, she's cute, that's nice, and like, does she have anything to say? And then I had a couple, there were actually like a few personal experiences I had like leading up to it where I realized that no matter what I did as a woman, I would be put in a box. You know, you're either too ambitious, too aggressive, too this, or you're not enough. And I was like, either like a woman will be labeled a bitch, she'll be labeled a slut, she'll be labeled like whatever people want to label her as. And I'm like, I am so tired. I try to fit into this box. I try to be appealing here. I try to be polite here. And like, no matter what I do, you all have some sort of opinion, and you all being like men, and sometimes, you know, like women as well. Like I think sometimes older women will also like be very judgmental, which in some ways I understand because they've had to go through different challenges when they were rising up. But yeah, I think I was just like, fuck it. I want to do this for me. Like I want to feel good for me. And I think that when I feel good for me, that energy will translate and attract the types of women and men who are also vibrating at that similar energetic frequency.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I definitely want to dive into more Bad Bitch, but I want people to understand like who you were really. So you were an Olympic level gymnast. You went to Yale University. You ended Yale. You were starting as an analyst in investment banking. What was your kind of path from there up until now doing Bad Bitch Empire?
So I left my finance job pretty early on, like barely 2 years in. And I think it was just the moment I went in, I didn't feel good. I just knew I wasn't meant to like work in a sort of like corporate, like stodgy environment. And I think I've always had this feeling like I feel like I was meant to be more. Like I feel like I can create an impact, and I don't know what that looks like, but it's not going to happen here when I'm a cog, you know. And so
working until 4 a.m. every day and that's
yeah. So I just I remember telling my boss at that time and my parents that I was like, I don't think I want to go down this path, and I think I want to be an entrepreneur. And my boss at that time was like, what are you talking about? And then like, what would you do if you're not doing this? Like, do you know how many people would kill to have this position? It's like a dream opportunity. And I was like, yeah, but it's not my dream. And I know how many people would think this is a golden opportunity. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I like marketing. I like back then I was like, I think I like drinking wine. I like marketing. I like, you know, creating community. And eventually I figured it out, right? Like I Googled my way through. At that point I'd never heard of venture capital. I didn't like know really anything about entrepreneurship. I Googled like how to get money as an entrepreneur, and I discovered accelerators through Google. I didn't know how to create a pitch deck, so then I Googled my way through creating pitch decks, and then I came up with an idea. I went to a hackathon. My first idea was a late night munchies delivery app. That was my first startup that got funded by an accelerator. And it was in the process. I hired my CTO off Craigslist because that's what I did.
Oh my God.
It was not, I learned a lot from that. And I call that my starter startup. Whereas like, I think every entrepreneur should have a starter startup where they just make all the mistakes and like have no idea what they're doing.
Like
and
really
like,
naive, like who knows, like now you say it and what, you use Craigslist to find your CTO, but it worked at the time.
Yeah. And I like went to Silicon Valley to pitch my startup in this like big startup conference thing. And that was kind of my first foray into this world. And I realized like, and I think because I was still very unsure of myself, I was like entering this new space. I unfortunately met some like very creepy men who were investors. And I think that experience was like, who do I talk to? Like going through this experience. And I was like, I had mostly male entrepreneur friends at that point who were like trying to help, and I shared my experience with one of those guys, and he was like, whoa, I didn't even realize that women go through this, because it's like when I'm pitch my startup, the only thing I have to care about is whether the investor thinks my startup sucks or not. Like I never have to think about him hitting on me or like making me feel uncomfortable, anything like that. And so that was really the impetus for me to start She Works, which was initially just it was like a support group for women who wanted to talk about their experiences, fundraising, and I realized how much I like loved that community, because at that point I didn't have female entrepreneur friends, because a lot of my friends from college were, having regular jobs, and that turned into a like much larger community that had 7 chapters in different cities around the world. And then I kept growing that, and eventually was acquired by Republic in 2019.
Wow.
And then I moved on from there to coaching a lot of startup CEOs. And I realized that for a lot of women, they were coming to me for fundraising or negotiation or pitching, and that the biggest challenge for them was actually not the tactics of fundraising or pitching, it was the self-worth aspect. And so that, fast forward is how I eventually like got my book deal, because I was like, I feel like I'm starting to sense a pattern. And at this point, I feel like I have enough experiences and lessons that I would want to share in a book. And like the name Bad Bitch came to me ironically because I was writing about good girl brainwashing and just reflecting on all the things, the perfectionism, the people pleasing, the like shyness and like self-doubt. And I called it good girl brainwashing, and I posted it on Instagram, and there were so many girls who responded to it. And one girl said, "When are you starting Bad Bitch University?" And I was like, oh, okay, I know, good girl, bad bitch. And it's just like a good literary device to understand like the difference, know, and then the rest is history, with the book deal, and then eventually the launch of Bad Bitch Empire. And
yeah, and a lot of people know Bad Bitch Empire as this community investment platform, and it's really building unapologetic worth and wealth for women. So what do you think is the connection really between worth and wealth that women experience?
Yeah. So part of my journey over this past year has also been getting a lot more in touch with my like spiritual, energetic side, which I think we don't really emphasize in like a very logical, rational business world. But I think when you have low self-worth, I think energetically it's very hard to hold the energy of money. And I discovered this too when I was speaking to another coach, where she says like, for example, people who are in toxic relationships or toxic work environments, their nervous systems literally can't hold like certain amounts of positive energy and like the frequency of money or the frequency of like, like just receiving. And so when you are focused, when you have low self-worth or you're doubting yourself, you're so focused on the things that are wrong with you rather than the opportunities that are in front of you. And you're spending a significant amount of brain power, like fighting yourself, right? Like questioning things and doubting, like maybe they think that this of me, maybe they think that of me. And so you're like energetically begging for permission or like asking for approval, and people sense that, right? Like as an investor, like you've seen entrepreneurs who are just like, and unfortunately for a lot of women, where it's like you can just tell that they don't really believe in themselves 100%. They're not like delusional enough to be like, this needs to work no matter what, and have numbers to doubt.
They're like, and I feel like you're like, actually this isn't gonna work, and here, like you're like, here are your risks, and they're like, well, our risks are 200 pages long, and here's everything that could potentially go wrong, instead of, oh, here's everything that could go right.
Yeah, and I think it's like there's so one of the companies that Bad Bitch Empire just invested in, like she's a incredible woman. Her name's Miriam. She's a Pakistani immigrant building like Canva for video games. Like it's a Web3 company. And she's one of the reasons why I invested in her was like she like had that hunger, that tenacity, that grit that was aligned also with like she knew the risks, but she was very much like, yes, I know the risk. Here's what it is. But like, here's what we're doing. And here's like how we're plowing ahead. And it was just like, it's an energy thing, right? Like you can just tell. Yeah. And is this person like rain or shine, like whatever wall that's put in front of them, they're going to bust through it. They're going to be like, fuck the haters. Like, let's just keep going and let's keep building. And it's hard to do that when you subconsciously are also still wondering if you are going to be capable of doing that. So I think that for a lot of women, again, we can't fault ourselves for it, because everything in society conspires to make us feel like we're not good enough. So that's the brainwashing. But it's like, if you notice that's in yourself, if you notice that you're still doubting yourself, you're like, okay, how do I get past this and like do the work, right? Do the hype yourself up, listen. Like I stopped all the music I listen to. I have this bad bitch energy playlist. It's just like strong female voices who like, are super confident. I was like, when I'm not feeling confident, I just like listen to that. I'm like, yes, I am a bad bitch. I am a bad bitch today. We're like,
yeah, all right. You need to share that with me too. But
yes.
like, I think your book is so important, and particularly for women. So could you touch a little bit more on the book? Like, is there a part of the book that you could read? Or if I picked up the book right now, like, what do you want me to walk away with?
Ooh, there is so much. So there are the 10 bad bitch commandments to break free of good girl brainwashing and take charge of your body, your boundaries, and your bank account. I would say that the first part of the book, so the first third is around what I call body, which includes your relationship to the woman in the mirror. It includes your relationship to your voice and your relationship to your overall energy and your mindset. So I think that there's a really powerful foundational aspect of just like building up your relationship to yourself and your voice. So maybe I can like read a part of this.
And I just want to say, I feel like that's so important because I actually started seeing a therapist like a year ago now. Maybe it's in like 8 months. And it's like one thing that we really work on. Like I have like 3 notes around my house, and it's like, I am, and whatever you need to like hear every day. And one of them's like, I am smart, I am beautiful, and I'm enough. And they're around my house everywhere. And I just think it's so important, like that voice that you have, because it really like has such an effect on who you are and how you see yourself. And I truly believe that like if you tell yourself enough, like I'm enough, I'm smart, I'm whatever, like you will start to believe it, and then you could be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. So I want to read like when I explain like the definition of a bad bitch and like bad bitch, a woman who unapologetically takes charge of her body, her boundaries, and her bank account. A bad bitch knows who she is, knows what she wants, and knows she's going to get it. Each and every woman has the ability to activate the bad bitch that is already inside of her. The bad bitch is the woman you could be if you showed up as your most powerful and authentic self. It's the version of you that appears when you've let go of unnecessary fears and feel free to speak your truth and pursue your greatest dreams. The bad bitch is courageous, passionate, and abundant, exuding the grace and magnanimity inherent in all truly powerful women. Unlike the good girl who succumbs to external validation and judgments, the bad bitch is willing to push the limits regardless of what other people think or say. Unlike the good girl who convinces you that you are not worth the risk, that you'll fail regardless, the bad bitch doesn't consider failure as an option. She doesn't wait for permission. She simply strikes and never looks back. A bad bitch who knows her worth refuses to accept anything less than what she deserves. When someone doesn't appreciate her value, she doesn't lean in and work harder. She leans the fuck back and walks away because a bad bitch always has options.
Woo! I love that. Wait, that's so amazing. And I feel like it's just like every part of it, I feel like is so true, where it's like at one point you have to like ignore the voices, the external validation, the people telling you what you should be doing. And you have to be like, what do I want? And believe in yourself enough to go do it and be a bad bitch.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like this, the whole book is at the root of the book, it's about like self-respect and self-trust and self-belief. And then the more technical parts come in near the end of the book, where one of the commandments is a bad bitch loves money. And it's really about repairing your relationship to money from scarcity to abundance and like letting go of any of those, I call it false financial fictions that make you believe that you are not worthy of it, that you're not good with numbers, that you're not good with money, that you need to save instead of invest. And then I also start teaching women. So I have a bad bitch invest her assets. So it's like, how do you start investing? How do you start thinking about like wealth generation? And I obviously focus on angel investing and like how any woman can really start thinking about putting her money to work to invest in the types of women, the types of companies, the types of leaders that are creating the impact that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, and that's really how we first bonded. Like we were in Texas at a conference and we were like, no women are investing. Like you were starting this, you were trying to get women to invest more. And it's so true because women go ahead and they save money for a rainy day. It's like, but their rainy day fund keeps growing, but not to the extent that men are taking risks or angel investing or putting it into crypto and other like risky assets. And I think it's so important to have something out there and have somebody telling you like, it's okay to take some of the money, take the risk. It's like not always going to be worth it, but it's like at the end of the day, like it does pay off. And I think like in order to have a bigger reward, you need to take a bigger risk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's like getting in the game, and like so many of us still sit on the sidelines waiting for permission from the boys club, like waiting for someone to give us a seat at the table. And it really is like bad bitches don't wait. Like I think that's, as I've embraced more of like my bad bitch energy, I'm like, it is just like calling out bullshit. It's like, I don't like this. Like, I'm just, goodbye. I'm going to go do it my way. And like, I think more women who are just like, get into that vibe, they're like, that's boundaries. So the boundaries is like this body boundaries bank account. It's like the second part of the book where I'm really like, a bad bitch calls out bullshit. Like, you need to know your values and what you stand for. And there's a difference. Like, a woman's power comes from saying no to things that she does not agree with, that she does not align with. And I think this like any sort of relationship, whether like personal, professional, we have been trained to say yes even when we don't want to, right? Even when it feels misaligned, and because we're like, oh, if I get this opportunity, and even if it's not as what I wanted and it's paying me less, like I should still say yes and just be grateful. But like, a woman who, like, when you truly come from that abundance and power, and you're like, the woman's power is in her ability to set boundaries and say no, because it is in that moment that a man will either choose to like raise his standard to meet her, or if he's like, he's incapable of it, then just fades away, right?
Yeah. Like on to the next one and find the opportunity that shows you the worth. And I feel like you have so many important lessons in your book. And honestly, I can't wait. Like, I'm listening to your podcast. I can't wait to hear your book. I guess, like, if you could share one piece of advice for every woman that you really just want them to hear, what would it be?
A woman steps into her full power, not when she is finally given permission to do so, but when she realizes she never needed permission in the first place. So what I mean from that is, look for areas in your life where you are subconsciously waiting for someone to give you permission. Whether it's you want to become an entrepreneur, but you're like waiting for someone to say, oh, your idea is good enough, or you are smart enough, or you are capable enough, and then you're doubting yourself. Like you're energetically waiting for permission to someone to say you are ready to be an entrepreneur. Or like, I want to go after this dream, and like I don't know, and I need, like, again, like you need approval or validation. It's like the moment you realize that like you are the main character in your life, and that no one's gonna come and like just give you like the thing that you need. It's like you need to become so clear in the reality that you want to create for yourself and just go after it. And I think the world will conspire to make that happen. You'll start attracting the right people and opportunities towards you. But like, you have to be bold enough and brave enough to just say, like, this is the vision, the version of reality that I see. And like, other people may not see it yet. And it might take some time for people to like see what I see. But if I stay strong in that direction, then eventually like that will happen. And I think about life and goals like that a lot, and this frame of like quantum identity, right? So it's like you can, at every decision you make, every action you take is a vote towards the identity and the type of person and the reality that you want to create, right? Like, you could tomorrow decide, I don't want to be an investor, I want to be a fashion designer, and then you could become a fashion designer, right? There are a million identities that you could take on. And then like but a lot of us choose to like fixate on one thing. You're like, okay, I've chosen to be a fashion designer. I don't think I could ever be an investor. Yeah. And it's just like changing clothes. I'm like, today I am going to be an investor, and I see that. And even if I didn't have the track record, even if I'm like, I don't know how to, you just like, you figure out a way and you create it.
I think that's so important, because I've also got like shit on. Like, I started in consulting. I switched to a startup out in LA doing tech sales. And on the side, I started angel investing. And like what you just said. I decided to put on another pair of clothes. I'm like, you know what? I'm in Web3 now. I'm a voice in Web3. And then I started sourcing deals for this VC fund. And I eventually got a job. And I remember one person specifically like putting me down, just being like on Twitter or something, just being like, all right, well, you came from like startup sales, data consulting, like you don't even know what you're talking about. And it's kind of like, who says that you're, yeah, sure, maybe you had more of a track record. I think it was a random anonymous account on Twitter for all that I know. But like, who's to say that like there is this path that you need to go on in order to be like the Mark Andreessen, the Chris, whatever the case may be, like to be the best investor? It's like, there is no path and everybody's on their own path. And I think it takes a lot of like telling yourself, being like, as you just said, like you don't need to stay on one path and there is no way to get to the end of the road. Like we all only have one life. And it's like, if you're not doing what you want to do, then like change and do something different and try something new. But I think so many people in our generation, I think our generation's better than our parents who like stayed in one job forever. But I still think so many people are just scared to even try. And I think if there's one thing, it's like you need to believe in yourself and you need to do what you want to do and stop waiting for other people to tell you that you can do whatever it is that you want.
Yeah. And I think it's like our parents' generation had that certain way of like stability and rising up. And in some ways, I think because our generation has so much freedom and it's like, now it's like, everything is possible. You could be a YouTube creator and like that's how you create your income, or TikTok, that I think a lot of people are also in like analysis paralysis and like decision fatigue. They're like, and also purposelessness.
Yes.
Because I've heard a lot of creators who are like making money on TikTok and YouTube and they're like, there's no purpose to it. You know, they're just making money. So I think that it's like, and then you start doubting like, okay, maybe I could be a YouTube creator. Maybe I could be a VC. Maybe I could be an author. Maybe I could be a podcaster. And then you're like, I don't know what to do. So I think that's also very true. But then once you lean into, I trust that no matter what I do, I will pursue it in excellence and I will figure out a way, then that kind of liberates you from like feeling like it has to be perfect or it's like your job for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's like you have to try or else you'll never know, and there will be so many choices. It's like try something. If it doesn't work out, try something else. Like who's to say that you shouldn't try? So yeah. I'm so excited to read your book. I want to end with like, where can we buy the book? Where is it going to be out? What date? I'm honestly so excited to go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you can go to badbitchempire.com and order it. It has links to everywhere, or you can just find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, HarperCollins, Bookshop, like literally anywhere where there are books. You can pre-order it today, and it will start shipping on September 26th. So, and when you get the book, there's going to be, you're going to get some masterclass recordings, and also book buyers who get it before the 26th, there's going to be a really special event that you'll get that will be revealed very soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa, for coming on. And I honestly left this feeling pretty inspired. And I feel like other people will too, from the podcast and just listening to your story, reading your book. And I can't wait to hear more.
Thanks, Alana. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.